Today I want you to consider something that's rarely discussed: the door between earth and heaven. You didn't even know there was one, maybe. But before we do this, we must first understand the things about the earth. How do we begin to understand anything about objects, space, time, ourselves? Do we even know what the word duality means? To know this, we must use our heads. Literally. We must use the 5 external senses, 4 of which are located right in our heads: eyes, ears, nose, taste, and you can touch with your lips, so all 5 maybe. But to understand heaven, this must mean that we need something different. We need different senses than the ones we are aware of. First, where are they located? The head, right? That's why we have to use our head when dealing with earthly things. That's where use your head, the usual expression. Oh, use your head. You know, pay attention. And then the other one, the opposite, is he lost his head. You know, so the head is very important when you're walking around. To be headless is definitely a disadvantage. The head is also the seat of the physical brain that processes all the information that our 5 senses feed it. Unfortunately, most of us can only use our heads. But we see with our heads a world of sin, aging, war, politics, disagreement, disease, disaster, and death. Yet we also see beauty in a flower, in a baby, and occasionally even we think we find it in love. Why? Because the world is the world of duality. It is populated by both good and evil. Notice it takes 5 senses to observe the earth, and 5 is an uneven number. You'll see the importance of that as we go on. Remember, 5. Now this is something I didn't think of too much until I started to write this. The serpent, the snake, Satan, the father of lies. How did this animal get such a bad rap? He was called the father of lies, and also refers to the wisdom of the world. Now think about it. First, a serpent is an animal, not a man. Second, its whole body crawls along the earth. It has no feet. It can't stand up. And it can't walk around. It can't go anywhere except by slithering through the grass. It certainly can't see anything above it because it has no neck to support a separate head in an upright position. So its eyes rarely see anything above the earth, above the very ground it is crawling on, except when it raises its head to snap at something and bite. A snake must judge everything from below, from the lowest possible level of earth. He has a lot in common with the worm of the dust that we think we are. Why does the snake also refer to Satan? Why did Jesus call Satan a liar and the father of lies? Because Jesus knew that all judgments made on the animalistic physical level of the senses were lies. Yet 2,000 years after Jesus told us to judge not by appearances, but judge righteous judgment, there we are, still relying on our physical senses for all our opinions. Jesus kept saying, look up, lift up your eyes. I kept wondering what he was looking at, what he was looking for. The kingdom of heaven is in the midst of you. Well, I can't see the midst of me, hard as I look. Yet his words, if they were true, meant that heaven is here now. It's in, it's up. Why don't we see it? Well, maybe because we're looking down like the serpent. We're seeing with our animal, physical senses only. When you think about that, you begin to realize that he must have meant that we have other higher physical, higher senses that we can see above and within. It must mean that we have abilities we aren't using yet, that we don't even know about. Jesus called the dimension that he kept saying that we couldn't see, but look up. He called it heaven. And he said that if we activate these undiscovered senses, we'd be able to judge things from a higher perspective. There must be a vast discrepancy from what we see with our physical senses and what we could see if we were able to use our higher inner senses. There must be a way to know the truth that sets us free from the prison of this earth. There's only one thing that can explain why Jesus kept saying, look up, look above. He was telling men to focus on the opposite direction from what we focus on gradually and usually. Lift up your eyes. Look within. He meant to stop looking down at the earth, visible things, objects that had already appeared because of what we thought. Things that had already appeared on earth. He said to seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, because he saw that invisible higher dimensions caused everything that later appeared on earth. So we're all judging from effects, not causes. What a difference it makes. When Luke, in chapter 17, verses 20-21, it wrote, and when the Pharisees demanded when the kingdom of heaven should come, he answered them and said, the kingdom of heaven cometh not with observation, neither shall we say, lo here, lo there, for behold, the kingdom of heaven is within you. This is the only time, interestingly enough, in the whole Bible that the word observation is ever used. This is an important clue to the mystery of seeing heaven, a world within, a world above. It means that heaven can't be observed as a form by our normal earthbound senses from our snake eyes. Think about that. No wonder we can't see above. We're using the same senses that old serpent did. If our five senses could have seen heaven, don't you think Jesus' time would have, people would have known and seen heaven then? And certainly with our powerful telescopes today, if heaven were visible, we would have seen it with our eyes or the telescope's eyes. But since our planet doesn't look like heaven to me, we're forced to conclude the obvious but overlooked fact that we still don't even know about the senses Jesus meant. And we certainly aren't using them because heaven isn't on the nightly news. Oh, it is? You're surprised? We're still turning our attention in the wrong direction, down to the earth. Jesus said to follow him, and he said, I am the way. Where did he go? Up. He ascended like the butterfly who left one form to emancipate himself from a worm to a gorgeous, gorgeous flying butterfly. Where are you looking? What are most of us looking at most of the time? We're looking at the world out there. How many of you are staring into space right now? You're looking at each other, Some of you might even be watching me. Some of you might even be listening to me. Because I'm out here. I'm an object. I'm a form. And you can see me speaking. You can even hear me with your ears, most of us anyway. And we see the TV and the internet. We hear them. We constantly react. If our president does anything, whether you're for him or against him, boy, you've seen him. And you know what to form an opinion about because you heard it on the news. Here's one that most of us have been guilty of. If a bill comes in the mail and you look in your checkbook and you find out you don't have enough money, what do you say? I am broke. Oh God, I'm broke. And you base your conclusion, I am broke, on what? Your checkbook. And your checkbook is visible, isn't it? Well, sort of. And the point is, you're looking at something external to find out why you're broke. This is judging by appearances, what's already appeared. It is basing your prosperity on physical evidence. This means that you conclude that your prosperity is determined by the visible things that you see and have in your possession already. And this kind of judgment means that we don't know the most important truth in the world or above the world. The world does not control you, you control your world. And if you realize that you have the power to change the outer by your inner thoughts and your words, if only you would say, I'm a rich son of God, and I'm abundantly provided for. Thank you, God. I know you're everywhere, so you're everywhere. You're in my wallet. I just can't see you yet. So you are my prosperity. How many of us have ever looked at a bill and said, oh, thank you, God. I know you've paid it. Well, instead we speak into existence with the power we don't realize that we have, the exact things we don't want. When we say, I don't even like to say it up here, I am broke. Don't say things like that ever again. I think we should all get a plaque made for our homes that say, well, I'll tell you later what it says. That makes you pay attention. Maybe. If only we had believed what Jesus said when he said, by thy words thou shalt be justified, and by thy words thou shalt be condemned. The Bible tells us that we're made in the image and likeness of God, his sons. So how did our real Father create? Genesis 1. In 30% of the verses in the 31 chapters of Genesis 1, it says, and God said, and God called. Most of the others start with the exact words, let there be, and whatever he wanted to create. And there it was. And God blessed. God used words to create things that only then, after he used the words, were created as visible things. Words caused invisible ideas to form. It is the Word made flesh, literally. Every word you speak is made flesh, literally. And if we really, really, really understood that, well, most of us keep our mouths shut most of the time. But that's where the expression thoughts or things came from, because your thoughts are invisible things that later you will see in visible form. And Genesis ends with, and God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. Please note, not good and evil. There's no ugly tree in the garden here showing knowledge. Knowledge is the knowledge of men who created evil. God only creates good, and only created good, so only the good can really be real. God's words create, and we, his sons, do the same thing with in his image and using the same power. We also create with every word we speak. If only people who read the Bible would know the difference between when it's a metaphor and when it's literal. John said, and John was the great mystic of the writers, he said, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." The Word has always been the power that creates things that later appear on earth. Your word is God to your world because you created it. Notice this subtle truth is right in front of us every day if we could just hear it or see it. The very spelling of the word world gives you a clue. It's exactly the same word except add an L to it. The power is again hidden in plain sight for those with eyes to see. Now I love this. Clothes make the man. We still have a snake's eye viewpoint of the world. Our eyes focus downward toward earth. But Jacob, although we know he's a thief, is the spiritual man, so that has to be a symbol. That has to be a symbol when you start analyzing it. The Bible cleverly used clothing and occupations to show whether we're seeing an animal man or a spiritual man, an awakened man, a man who knows he's divine and knows he has the power to speak words that create. And how was this done? Just look at old hairy Esau. He's got hair like an animal. And they're always called earthy, men of the earth. Remember Esau and Jacob, the only way their blind father could tell, not Abel, Jacob apart from his hairy brother was the hair. So what did wise, smart Jacob do, the spiritual man? He tied a piece of hair, animal hair, around his arm and let his father feel it. And with that, he stole the inheritance of the first son. And I was telling this to a friend of mine, telling her, hey, this came to me, what do you think about it? She said, well, he's a thief. You know, I don't see anything good about that. Well, that made me think again about what I was going to say. So I got to thinking about it. But the truth is that every awakened spiritual man steals the porridge, the inheritance away from the hairy earth man, automatically, because the natural man forfeits it by his ignorance. He doesn't know that the porridge isn't going to help him that much. It's a momentary, temporary thing. He doesn't understand that if he were awake, like the spiritual hairless man, he would have the whole world if he wanted it. So Esau, in his ignorance, chose a bowl of porridge. And he got what he created. That's what he wanted. That's what he got. The other man knew that he could get more. So he chose what he wanted. He wanted more. And every spiritual person gets more. I love this. John the Baptist, he's one of my favorites because look at his wardrobe. He wore a raiment of camel's hair, bound by a girdle of leather. This means that John's thoughts were still on the animal level, focused on external things. A camel's an animal, certainly not a man, and leather, a girdle, I think a girdle was a belt, that's made from animal skins. Plus John, he fasted from wine and food. This makes me feel good. External things, not inner things. Thoughts, ideas, words, and emotions. Aha! That's what we should be fasting from. Negative ones, wrong ones. John is still animal man. You think he's John the Baptist, he's such a great guy. Well, he is the highest man on the earth level, as it says in the Bible, in words I've forgotten. And how did John die? It wasn't an accident. He literally lost his head. He was beheaded at the king's orders. We must all eventually lose our heads and judge from within, not the head with its outer directed senses that continually lie to us. Now let's turn to Jesus. What clothes did he wear? When they took him down, his body down from the cross, they took his garments and they made 4 parts. Notice, not 5 senses, we're back to 4. And a coat, his coat, was made without seams, and it was woven from the top throughout. 4 is a whole number. Jesus knew the whole truth. He didn't view things in a divided way. He didn't think outer things were the cause of inner things. 4 also refers to a square, 4 even equal sides, where all sides are equal and balanced, and therefore stable. I couldn't help but wonder, except this would be another talk, whether the word where Jesus was born in a stable told us even more than we ever recognized. 5 is the number of the senses, an uneven number. And his coat was woven. I have never seen an animal knitting. So we know that this is somewhat above the animal level. From the top, that's where he processed and got his information from, not from the lower senses. He looked up to the greater dimension and performed what we in our ignorance called miracles, because he knew what and who we really are. We are animal man when we say God is life, and then we say death and taxes are inevitable. By the power of our word, we affirm, make form, make it firm, the very things we say. If we stopped saying that we believed in death, and if we really could stop belief, we wouldn't die. We wouldn't need to do that. We'd just ascend. But as long as man thinks he must die and says, well, I've got life insurance, what he means is he's got death insurance. Death will continue to be man's experience. That's the way it is. We've created it. God is the principle of life and health. And people used to say, especially in the monasteries, this illness is the will of God. Offer your suffering up. The more you suffer, the more you have to offer up. What the heck kind of God wants your lousy illness? I mean, think about it. Yuck. We say our God is prosperity. God is everywhere, and then we say, I'm broke. How can we not be prosperous when you think about it, when God is our wealth, and he's everywhere? I wish I had the omnipotent, omnipresent screen on. The most important thing we need to learn today and every day, to relearn, is how to open the door to heaven. Do what Jesus said. Look within. Meditate, even if it's for a few minutes in a day. Close those outer eyes. I like the idea that I and lie just happen to rhyme. Open the door to heaven. Know the truth. We create our reality from the inside out. Speak words that are true. Watch your mouth. That's the sign that we all should put all in all our rooms. Watch your mouth. Literally, watch what words come out of it, because as they come out of your mouth, they land in your world in the exact same form that you said. Clean out your negative emotions and beliefs. Tapping usually works well for that. And if you don't know what tapping is, I'd love to have a class afterwards, short one, and show it, but you can Google tapping. The great Google knows everything. It will show you how to tap. And tapping is free, it's easy, it's fast, and extremely effective. Our lives will never get any better until we clean out our internal beliefs, our poisonous negative emotions, and those words that we speak so carelessly. This practice pays huge dividends. There's nothing more important than knowing the truth except living it. Everything depends on how much truth you know, speak, and live. The Bible is not the best-selling book in the history of mankind. Accidentally, it's because in it were laws. Yes, they were hidden in stories for children, like the stork delivers babies, until we grew up enough to begin to understand what the words really conveyed, what they were symbols for. So keep this in mind. Every time you open your mouth, you open or close the door to heaven. Why? Because your words create your world. Which world do you want to create, heaven or hell? I have been an inspired creator of hell in the past. That's one of the things that motivated me to get out of it. And many of us have been through experiences that we created. Boy, were we imaginative. I sure was. I have a very vivid imagination. And when it goes negative, it goes really, really negative. And most of us have that same thing going on in our minds and our experience. It's strictly up to you. Every time you say the magic words, I am, you open or close the door to heaven depending on what follows those words. Because you are whatever you say you are. So remember, watch your mouth. Look at those words and watch what you say, I am anything. Because I caught myself this morning saying something on the way over here, even with this talk right in my mind. And I had to say, oh, shut your mouth. Let's bring heaven to earth. Look up, speak up, rise up, ascend, open the door to heaven. You now have the key, and you always did, but now you found it.